Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today is fun. Today's like hanging out at the bar with some good friends, like just BSing and having a good time. These guys are two warriors, but they speak truth, man. That's why I love being around these guys. So Tro, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I'm really excited to get Vinnie Tortorich back on here. Huge. I'm just a big fan. I'm like fanboying right now. Every time he comes on, I'm like a little fanboy. And not only am I a fanboy, I'm a customer too. You know, I'm a customer too because I believe in it. The Pure Vitamin Club, I get magnesium and I get the multivitamin. So
how much we get paid for promoting Vinnie?
Zero. I don't get any money. Have you sent me a check yet, Vinnie?
Not yet. But
not yet.
Hey,
no, right?
Talking like that, I feel like it's hair club for men.
If people have been listening for a while, look, I'm going to tell you my appreciation for Vinnie. Tro and I go, hey, we're going to start this podcast. He was our first guest that we had outside of Jason and Megan. He was our first outside person we had on. And so it was kind of cool that he goes, yeah, I'll do it. Like, it was cool. Like, he has a reputation. He has a huge following. So that helped us out to get off the runway for sure. So Vinnie, we really appreciate you and all you're doing. And, having the courage to really stand up when everyone says you're nuts, going way back. So they may be right about you being nuts, but you were right on nutrition for sure.
Yeah.
But welcome.
Thank you guys for having me back. It's always a pleasure. God, Tro, you look different every time I see you, man. When you were first on my show, it had to be 3+ years ago. You had lost maybe 100 some odd pounds, but you look like you're down from that. Am I making that up, or are you still moving downward?
I'm flat. You know what happened? So I probably hit my peak. So I mean, I'm going to talk just a little bit composition wise. I was at my peak about 2 years ago, and then but I had an accident, right? I was in a motor vehicle accident. I had to get surgery on my spine. So now I don't know if you could tell. You could probably tell because you're a trainer. You see the atrophy on the
yeah, you have a lot more.
Yeah. So I mean, but still, look, I've maintained my weight. I've maintained my weight. It must be the diet, but yeah, I mean, I'm about where I was 3 years ago. Where I was.
Even though the composition has changed a bit because you might not have as much hypertrophy, as much muscle. That's proof of what I've been saying for 30 years, that exercise is a poor way to lose weight. Maybe you've lost a little muscle mass, but your weight hasn't changed. You're keeping your weight down.
Same. Yeah. Weight's pretty much the same. Yep.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah. Vinnie, just to bring that up, I'm a lifelong obesity parolee, and, I was in obesity jail for a long time. When I got this injury, I was terrified. I was like, this was like about a year ago. I was like, oh man, I'm going to gain a ton of weight, and now it's like a year later. It's like, okay, wow, this low carb stuff actually works, and maybe I was just a little, you're always scared of weight regain. I mean, Brian, I'm sure you've lived through that too, right? Like you don't want to see that scale go the wrong way. So
yeah, we all do. I mean, that's the thing. That's the biggest fear a lot of my patients have. They're like afraid they're going to lose it and gain it all back, like they have with liquid diets and everything else they've done. And when they can maintain it, I'm telling you, man, like it's so much fun to see it where people go, oh, I know what to do now. Like they have the confidence to continue this.
A lot of people, and I'm sure you guys have seen the same thing. Brian, you have the clinic now. Troy, you've been doing this for a long time. I've had people take me to task and say, okay, you claim that I can do this without ever exercising. So I'm going to try that. I'm going to try that version of it. And sure enough, that's exactly what happens. They'll do zero exercise and lose weight. I've actually had several people, I don't know if I've had any quadriplegics, but paraplegics, people in wheelchairs. And they're going, look, I can't move much. I'm stuck in a wheelchair and I've lost 75, 100, 150 pounds. I get those stories, man. It puts tears in my eyes that these people, they didn't have a doctor or someone explaining this to them at some point.
Yeah, it's frustrating. It's frustrating too. And I think we get so focused on the scale, sometimes we miss the big picture. As a matter of fact, I've been researching a lot, visceral fat, subcutaneous fat, the differences, how our body reacts. And exercise, really, it's interesting. I was reading a study on interleukin-6 that you release with exercise, and it goes and increases lipolysis. So it's not just calories in, calories out, because if they blocked that, they didn't lose weight like everyone else did. When they unblocked it, they lost weight again. So exercise plays a role for sure, but it's not the way we think about it is calorie burning necessarily.
Yeah, the simple or the simpleton way that I always put it, we pretend that we can run our car out of gas, and then once it's out of gas, we can continue to get it to go down the street. The only way it's going to happen is if you get out and push. It's so that the same with exercise. You can't to say that exercise is the way to lose weight is identical to saying that calorie in, calorie out is a way of losing weight. It's the same process. And I always, I was into cycling big time for 30 years and still am, but not to the degree. I'm not doing ultra races right now. But it's always interesting when you watch the pros. People think, oh, well, they're riding a bike 15 to 17,000 miles a year. Of course they're going to be thin. Well, yeah, that doesn't hurt, but if you talk to every cyclist, they're weighing their food, they're making sure that they're not getting too much and all that. They're purposely trying to stay underweight, under any kind of normal weight. Marathon runners, same thing, which goes to prove that it just doesn't work the way we think it's going to work.
Can I ask you a question, Vinny? Because I loved your book, Fitness Confidential, just your own personal struggles with health and kind of the mental fortitude. I mean, I love the themes of the book, absolutely loved it. And the fact that you were preaching this, back when Oprah was on TV, if you look at the data, and you've looked at the data, I know, for exercise, when they look at people who exercise and diet alone or exercise alone, diet seems to be 90% of the weight loss, right? So yeah, we get it. Exercise doesn't help lose weight. But if you look at people who have maintained massive weight loss, I think 95 or 9, it's even maybe more, 97% do regular activity and exercise. So I think, and I wanted to get your opinion, it's a mental health benefit, right?
Yeah,
the mental health,
it's a lot of that, Tro. And on top of that, it's, it's the thing I always say about vegans. They go, well, these vegans are healthier. Look at them. They live longer. Yeah, usually people who are seeking out, a better way to eat, even though veganism is not a better way to eat, they think it's so. Those people are also exercisers, non-smokers, usually teetotalers, or drinking very little. They're doing a lot of other things, that could end up being a problem down the road, So you can't look at it and go, well, because they're not eating meat, they're healthier, right? So you can say the same thing about people who exercise. I'm a big time exerciser. As a matter of fact, I don't know if you guys can see my video. There's a bike behind me in my office. The contraption right next to me right here is my rowing machine. Once I'm done with this actual podcast, I'm going to have about 2 hours. The reason the bike is sitting there is because I'm going to take this shirt off. I already have a t-shirt underneath. I'm going to get on that bike. This computer will become my screen to watch some old movie or something. And I'm going to be on my rollers on that bike until my next podcast. So people go, how do you find the time? I make it to where I trip over things. My equipment is around me in my office. If I'm not using it, I'm tripping over it. Right. But that's all part of making something work. Right. So if you can make that work, then when you walk into the kitchen, you can make better decisions. You know, it's all part of this integrative thought pattern. I went off on a diatribe there, but maybe you get what I'm talking about.
No, I mean, I think that's it. How is it that we know from the studies that it doesn't help with weight loss, but we know that people who maintain weight loss actually are doing exercise? I think that it's just helping the mindset, helping the mental health, the stress release. If you're nobody ever said, oh, I was really stressed out, I did 30 minutes on the rower, I regret it. But everybody says, oh, you know, I was stressed out, I drank, 2 bottles of wine and I ate chips and I regret it, right? So I think, so that my theory, my working theory is it's the mental health. You're the exercise guy, and I was like, let me see.
It's all the above. I think it's all the above. I think it's one of those things we say it works, but how? But because when we talk about sustained weight loss, if you do a 500 calorie a day diet, you're going to lose weight, but you're losing muscle mass, which is your metabolism. So then you go back to eating the old way you did when things aren't going right, and then you gain a bunch of weight back, and it's all fat weight. So the big thing is maintaining lean muscle mass, and so losing weight slowly and doing it the right way and losing visceral fat. I'm telling you guys, look, visceral fat is the big problem we're facing, right? We have to attack, and muscle mass will help you to decrease the visceral fat. That's why Tro, you get upset with the muscle guys, because their muscles are taking up the energy rather than storing in the visceral fat. The visceral fat's the last ditch effort to keep you from getting diabetes. That's what it's doing. It's not that your body's doing something wrong. It's doing something right to protect you, but you're screwing it up with too much energy in the system.
Yeah, absolutely.
So fasting, intermittent fast, I'm telling you, the data we're going to have, watching people who we can't get the sugars, they fast for a day, boom, sugars normalized. I'm seeing it. Clinically, I'm seeing it on this continuous glucose monitor. I'm watching people that are running 260 all the time. They fast one day or maybe two, and their sugar's running 90 to 110. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. So it's an energy problem ultimately, right? So you could be eating fat all day, and if your fat stores are full, you put yourself into a jam. Ted Naiman is correct on this for sure, in my opinion. So I think that's that. So having muscle mass is our biggest indicator of longevity.
Yeah, I think it is, and along with muscle mass, and it's the one people just never think about, but bone mass, and you can only get that from exercise, and you can only get it from weight-bearing exercise, which is not the bike, which is not the rowing machine, which is not swimming. Well, what is it? Well, it's running. Well, wait, Vinny, I can't run. It's walking. If you can walk, you're building bone mass. And you want to talk about the fountain of youth. We could sit here and say, well, exercise is not completely needed to lose weight. And that's a fact. Tro just proved it over the past 8 months with his injury. But exercise is absolutely the fountain of youth. You will never talk me out of that. Every time I go back to a reunion, I see it. I see my friends who I grew up with. Whenever I meet people my age, I see it. When I don't, unlike Ted and some of the other guys, I don't take my shirts off for the computer screen, but I see it when I take a shower at night. There's no fat around my waist. There's no love handles. And I'm 58 years old. And I know it works because I'm with a 59-year-old woman who exercises and eats right. And, she was a Bond girl back in her 30s. Hell, she could still do it today. Her body looks amazing. And it's because, we wake up every day, there's a schedule, there's exercise, there's eating right. You can't look around and go, well, these people are gifted. I'm not gifted. Everyone else in my family is fat. I come from genetically fat people. I'm not only not fat, I'm pretty ripped up for any age. So what does that tell you about exercise? What does that tell you about eating right?
Absolutely. And you were talking about this stuff before anyone was talking about it, right? So I know you took a lot of heat at the beginning, and then you came out with Fat the documentary. Now you have a sequel. So what tell us about this, man? Let people know what's coming, what you're throwing at us.
Yeah. And let me answer what you said, to what you said first. I was so scared of the word ketosis because I had been putting clients in ketosis since the early 90s. But when I wrote the book, I wrote it with one of my Hollywood writer friends, Dean Laurie. And he kept saying, well, when are we going to mention ketosis? And I kept saying, Dean, we are not putting the word ketosis in this book. Think about that. We wrote that book. It's been out for 8.5 years. So I wrote it about 10 years ago. I was scared. Now, the word keto didn't exist. That's a word that came off of ketosis. It just did not exist as a word. It became a shortened down version of ketosis on the internet. I was scared to put that word in my book. That's why I put no sugars, no grains, because I felt like I can at least get a few doctors to follow me down that path. But they were not going to follow me down the ketosis path because it sounded too much like ketoacidosis, which is something you can die from very quickly. Hell, I still hear doctors and people like Jillian Michaels out there going, this is not normal to be in ketosis. You know, it's like, please shut up, young lady who knows nothing about health and fitness. You know, but that's the world we were living in back then. Well, then I started the podcast in order to promote the book, and I would talk about low carb, still staying away from the keto word, still calling it no sugars, no grains. Hell, I have the trademark on NSNG, you know, but I was still scared to use it. Then the podcast, you know, I was called a charlatan and a crazy guy and all this stuff, but the podcast started gaining listeners and people started losing weight and it became a thing. And before you know it, you got your Trokalasians and your Brian Linskys and all these people going, hey, wait a minute, this shit works. Let's go in that direction. Now you got doctors, you got MDs saying, yeah, we're in, we're good. You have the Ted Naimans and all these guys that start pouring in. This is all good news. And that's what allows a guy like me who has no film experience, you know, when a producer, a documentary producer like Peter Pardini shows up on your doorstep and says, literally on my doorstep, he was at my house and he said, you need to do the movie. And I was scared because I wasn't going to put my own money behind it. My God, I didn't have enough to do that. But we crowdfunded it and it worked. And we put that first movie out and it became a really big deal. Someone told me it was trending again on iTunes. I don't know where it is today, but yesterday or day before, it was in the top 40 again. That's unheard of for a food documentary to go that high after a year. It's been out for well over a year and a half. So it's trending. It's still trending. It's still up there. It became the #1 movie on iTunes. It's now the #1 movie that Gravitas has ever put out, period. It was the #1 documentary. It's their #1 movie. That's how often people are watching this movie. I tell you all that because during this whole COVID thing, this whole shutdown, I couldn't get Peter back on board because he was working on a different project, but I did have his ear whenever I needed it. And we had all of this incredible footage. We actually overshot the first movie, knowing that there could be a second movie. So I sent you guys a copy of it, right? Did you guys see it?
Yeah.
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 The movie, people go, well, how did you have the wherewithal to be in a different outfit up against a different screen? We shot that when we shot the first movie. We shot me in 2 positions because I knew I had 2 movies, but I only had one amount of money. So since I had everyone there anyway, and it was funny to watch Gary Taubes and Nina Teichels and all these people. I would be asking them a certain set of questions, driving them down one road, and then the questions would veer to the right, and we would go down another road, and they would go, what does that have to do with what we were talking about? I'm like, just shut up and answer it. You know, I was creating the second movie in the first movie. All I had to do was go through and edit it. And I'm being told by everyone who's seen it that it's actually better than the first movie. So it's yet to be seen. People haven't seen it yet. It comes out in a couple of weeks. You can pre-order it right now on iTunes. It's the only place you can pre-order it right now. It makes a big difference when people pre-order it because We could come out really high, or we could come out at number one, which is a really big thing for us. But what did you guys think of the movie?
I didn't know if Troy was. Well, Vinny, I mean, it's all the same people that we know, that we've seen the data and we have life experience. So I'm sitting back saying, yeah, I think it's so important because people have such a fear of fat. They have such a fear, like all the time. That, but doctor, you know, you're telling people eat avocados, and you know, I think it's just interesting to me that how things are changing. I'll put it that way. I just have a patient as an ICU nurse, and guess what? They switched their lipid from 100% soy to coconut oil and different oils, and they had such a big improvement in patient outcomes that they switched the entire thing over, even though it's more expensive, right? So you start realizing, and that's the other thing is when they did a lot of these early keto studies, they were putting everyone on soybean oil. I mean, all the mice and all this stuff. I was like, that's not an accurate representation of that's not what we're advising people. So I think there's so much in the science. I lost a lot of faith in the scientific community because of that, because that's clearly misleading. And so you draw attention to stuff then saying, guys, look, let's look at the data and not how you feel about it or what everyone's told you. And I think that's what we've been saying all along also.
I think you know, that, and we look, I don't go after vegans. I think it's a low shot to go after people who are trying to do good, right? They're trying to do the right thing and they find veganism, but I do go after these vegan charlatans, these guys who call themselves doctors in the movie. And I even put a piece of one of them in a trailer, that wag job McDougal, who literally says, and nobody can go back and try to retract. They can't go, well, he misrepresented us. You can go on the internet and find the whole interview. This guy literally says that the only way to combat type 2 diabetes is to put people on 80% sugar. Straight, he goes, you could give them straight sugar and the other 20% white rice, and they will get rid of their type 2 diabetes. Well, why is that guy not locked up for putting out that information? I mean, who is allowing doctors to do this? I mean, Tim Noakes sent one tweet out one night and went through 2 court cases. Why is this guy not in court right now? Can anyone explain that to me?
He literally said sugar will help diabetes, you know, yeah. And people like him, charlatans like him, they would have done fine in a world that did not have a continuous glucose monitor.
Man, thinking the same thing, Tro. You know, exactly.
And they would have done fine in a world where we couldn't order, like in our office, in mine and Brian's office, we could do lipids in 5 minutes. We could get your lipid results in 5 minutes. We could give you a continuous glucose monitor so you could see your blood sugar in real time, okay? And you will know exactly who lied to you. You'll know it because you're talking about people who lied to you, right? I mean, basically, both documentaries, and they're both excellent. So just go watch it, get it on Amazon, buy it on Tunes, whatever. Okay, get it, because you're describing a system where we were, you know, maybe it was their best judgment, maybe they were, you know, a little ideological or dogmatic, maybe some people went absolutely bat crazy, you know, and started basically blatantly lying. Okay, maybe for animal rights reasons, maybe for religious reasons, I'm not sure. But at this point in time, if you go to see Brian or you come to my office, we can give you a continuous glucose monitor. We can give you a blood lipid level, okay, that it will give you results in 5 minutes, okay? And it'll let us know who lied to you. And they all lied.
And we have single blind studies, like, I'm joking, but you know, my patient, I'm looking at their tracings and all of a sudden I see it spike like crazy. I'm like, hey, what happened Tuesday night? Oh, you know what? I had some canned corn and I added it to my salad. It's like, well, there's your problem, right? Your salad the night before was fine. So things like that, where they say, oh, fruits and vegetables are healthy. Fruits and vegetables aren't the same thing, first of all, right? There's a big difference between eating fruit all day and eating vegetables. However, I have a guy who's eating fruit all the time, and he works out with a friend of mine, and he's a machine and he has muscle mass and he's vegan. but he doesn't eat processed food. He eats real food all the time. So I'm getting his continuous glucose monitor on this guy, looking at his numbers, his insulin. He may look great and he may be metabolically sick. I don't know. But, so I think we have to have an open mind to say, because, we could say you can't put muscle mass on without protein. This guy's somehow getting enough protein. He's taking amino acid supplements. But, things like that, I think we have to learn from each other and say, okay, if you are going to do a vegan diet, how do we do it as safe as possible? What I can tell you is that another vegan this week with an insulin level of 58, 58, it's a disaster. You got to change something, dude. You're going to get diabetes. I can guarantee it 100% if you keep doing what you're doing, right? So because what's he eating? Quinoa and rice and brown bread, and all day long he's eating this stuff. And these guys they're listening to these guys who say, yeah, eat fruit smoothies all the time and it's a huge amount of fructose and sugar, So that's the thing is the CGM does not lie. The scale will lie, but the CGM does not lie. And along those lines, Vinny, Chris Cornell, who's a friend of the show, he's helped with all we're doing. He has a continuous glucose monitor. He doesn't have diabetes. So he started eating different foods and putting it online. And all these nutrition experts were attacking him, saying this is it's unacceptable. It's not necessary. But now he knows when he eats a certain thing, his sugar spike, because it's individualized. They've done twin studies, and twins respond differently to the same food. So knowing your numbers really helps.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the vegan bodybuilder guy, and you said, you asked and answered the question right in the middle of it. You said, I don't know where he's getting the protein from, but then you said he's taking amino acids. Think about it: the EAAs and the BCAAs. Most bodybuilders take that stuff. That's what you need. That's the building block for muscle. Essential amino acids and branched chain amino acids. You're just not going to get that from a vegan diet. So don't say that I'm a vegan and I'm putting on muscle when you're taking you're taking exactly from the protein what you need to build muscle by taking it, exogenously in a supplement. So, and it's all that disingenuous, bullshit. When you look at that movie, Game Changers, they had all of these athletes, and one of them was, this is the strongest man in the world. Yeah. Well, that's a lie, because he's never won any competition. He's never been even near the strongest man. But it didn't stop Cameron from saying this is the strongest man in the world, right? Neither was anyone else. I mean, if you look at any of the athletes in a movie, including the guy who was the host of that movie, none of them were able to continue their career after they became vegans. So it further perpetuates these lies, which is interesting. And when you talk about a guy like this Chris Cornell, who, just put a monitor on and said, hey, here are the results. And then people are going to sit there and tell him, no, that's not, why are you lying to people? It's like, no, these are the actual results. I'm not lying to anyone. Here are the results. But nobody wants the truth. Right? They want their version of the truth, which I'm just not interested in.
Yeah, I want the truth.
A lot of interests.
Right? You want the truth and go, hey, if you're going to be vegan, how do we make it happen for you? How do we keep you? That's the thing is there's ethical we have to, Tro and I have to treat every patient that comes before us, right? Most of them are seeking us because we're keto and low carb, excuse me. But we have a mix of patients. So you say, okay, in your case, you're 82 years old. How do we handle you different than a 23-year-old triathlete, right? So I think that's, and as you pointed out, you didn't want to draw attention to keto. We're not called Keto MD. We're called LowCarbMD, right? So because it's a spectrum. Some people are going to benefit. If you're diabetic and you're a disaster, you're going to benefit from cutting your carbs as low as you can. We see that clinically. We know that. So if you're a 23-year-old triathlete, can you get away with more carbs than me? Absolutely, because I'm an old guy, that's trying to get of visceral fat. So I think we have to look at it. It's people say we're cookie cutters. You're not cookie cutter, because you have to individualize our treatment. All of our patients, we don't give a meal plan to go, this is what you have to eat and you're going to be successful, right? It's really what works for you and what's acceptable lifestyle. That's the big thing no one talks about. We're not living in a lab. We're living in real life. When our wife's leaving us and we lose our job and we have to deal with lockdowns and all this stuff, that's when people are going. I'm having tons of people losing weight during this epidemic, right? We all are. We're seeing it. We're seeing people get their diabetes under control while everyone else is a disaster, increased risk. So this is medicine, guys, prevention.
Go on, Try.
No, I was going to say one of the beautiful things about these documentaries is exposing kind of how we got here, right? I mean, that's what, in an easy way, like when my wife watched Fat, and when we did that promotion back when restaurants were open here in the New York City area, we got about 100 people who turned up, and they were just excited. And it was when we were sitting at a steakhouse, basically enjoying company. We did a screening of Fat, and then you know, everybody was talking, and it was easy for the average person to understand how we got here, and why we hear what we hear. And that's what I love about the documentaries that you do. It just takes it. First of all, it's fun to watch. My wife loved it. Like, she doesn't like the science and all that stuff, but it was like, it was perfect for the average person to get what's going on, you know? And because they don't understand. They hear us say these vegan guys are crazy, and you know, and you know, they got it all wrong. But it's tough to really understand how true that is. And I think that's what your films have done. Basically, they just show how true that is.
Well, thank you. You know, before the first movie came out, I was home at Christmas time, and a bunch of the family was sitting around later in the day, and my mom asked me how the movie was going, and I said, well, you know, I have a copy of it. If we could pop it up on the screen. So we did the whole thing where we popped it up from a computer onto the television. And my mom's brother, who's a scientist, you know, he worked in a chemistry lab most of his life, but he's scientific mom. My mom has a master's plus 30 hours in, I think, 3 different subjects. So my mom is no lightweight when it comes to education. My dad's a doctorate, but it's of history. So you're sitting around with these really smart people and a dummy like me, and they're watching it, and I'm a little nervous because these are all academic types. I came from a family of these super smart people. And I'm like, oh, geez, what's my mom, brother? You know, he's sitting there quietly. I'm like looking out of the corner of my eyes. My uncle, I'm named after him. You know, this whole deal. And at the end of it, he said, I love what you did here because you didn't just say something, you said it, and then you popped something up on the screen to prove it. Meaning you said, hey, here's what's going on, and then here's an article. And I didn't just show the article. I either had my wife or this other guy, Mike Dawson, read what the science was. I wanted the audience, I spoon-fed it to him to go, look, this is what it's actually saying. Because a lot of times people don't do that. You know, when you're doing a vegan propaganda film, they always do the thing where they'll go, eating an egg, well, it's like smoking 5 cigarettes a day. Okay, I'll believe you if you could throw the study up on the screen. Oh, wait, you didn't do that? You just threw that out, and now you're going to walk away from it? Just throw that hand grenade in a room and walk away? You know, I don't have the ability to do that. If I'm going to say something, I'm going to show you where it came from. And I think that's why people like what I'm doing, because I take a simpleton approach. You know, you tell me, I'm like, I should have been from the show me state. You know what? Yeah. You could tell me something or show me, prove it. And if you could prove it, then I'll believe you. And that's what we try to do.
That's why I was laughing when you were talking about academia. I was like, could you imagine Vinnie Tortorich in academia? Like, you would be eating by yourself in the corner, and everyone would be like, "Oh no, there he is! Move over, everyone, leave him." Yeah, you would be ostracized. You would make everyone crazy because you're like, "Here's what's working. Here's the patient. Here's my results." And that's what us frontline doctors kind of feel the same way. Like, you guys aren't academics. What the hell do you know? Well, we're looking at pieces. Like, one of the most powerful things in any movie that I've ever seen is hearing the foot drop in the bucket, right? With Gary Fettke. And you wonder why this guy's passionate and what he went through, because he saw that. And when you see that as a doctor, when we see these, Tro and I have seen the disasters of what happens with poorly controlled diabetes and the ramifications that come when people don't even, they feel fine for a while, but then boom, everything hits at once and your whole life falls apart. And we've seen that. That's why we're passionate about what we do. And we know what's coming if we don't intervene. And so that sound in that movie with Gary Fettke was like, man, I've had a lot of people say, gosh, that impacted me, you know? And when I first saw it, I'm like, crap, Vinny, why are you putting this in there? That's brutal. That's so graphic. And so, but it's true. It's the truth. And people need to know the truth, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, you know, I think I talked about this on my show. I spent with Peter Pardini, we spent about an hour and a half one day trying to get the sound right on the foot dropping into the bucket because it was an actual surgery and the sound just wasn't there. And I said, this needs to be impactful, you know, and we just, and he, you know, it got comical at some point. I watched that foot drop into the bucket so many times, you know, and we were sitting there and it was like, flump. No, that doesn't sound like a foot. Bloomp. No, that doesn't sound like a foot. Glunk. That doesn't sound like a foot. We sat there. There were two places in that first movie where I just went nuts on sound. It was the foot dropping, and it was when we were showing the Inuit people killing an animal, I think a deer, or maybe a bear, for nutrition. And the rifle sound sounded like something out of a spaghetti Western. And I wanted it, you know, because I'm a shooter. It's like, no, it's got to sound like a real gun. It's got, I don't want to have, you know, whatever they do in the Western movies. This bullet isn't ricocheting out. And yeah, so I really spent time trying to get that right so that people can get the feeling of it. And I'm not a filmmaker, but man, I really wanted these things to be right, you know, because I've seen so many bad movies. I thought, God, what's his name? The guy that did Serial Killers and Donald O'Neill, Serial Killers and Serial Killers 2, folks, go see those movies. But, you know, I think Donald was working on such a small budget that sometimes he just threw it up there. You know, it was done on an iPhone. You know, he's interviewing Stephen Finney on an iPhone. I'm like, man, these are such great interviews. I wish they weren't so shaky, and I wish the sound was better and the whole thing. And I'm hoping that what we're doing here will help people raise their level. I just saw a great movie, Sacred Cow. Have you guys seen that yet?
Excellent movie. Yeah. Yeah. With
Yeah,
Suzanne Rogers and
Diane
Rob
something.
Wolf. Yeah. Diane Rogers. Sorry. Yeah.
Diane Rogers. Yeah.
And what's her name? And Rob Wolf.
Yeah. Rob Wolf. They did this great movie, and I had Diana on the show. And what a wonderful job they did. And it's shot beautifully. And it really tells a story. I think if more people are doing what I'm doing, Donald O'Neill was the beginning. I hope he continues to do what he's doing. Diana Rogers, she just put this incredible movie out, Sacred Cow. We can start making waves. And I commend both of you guys for changing. Brian, I know you changed your practice from just handing out drugs to changing your whole practice to trying to fix the problem. And I think if more people started doing that, more MDs started doing what you guys are doing, where you're going from the inside out versus, hey, let's see if we can, you know, put a Band-Aid on a broken leg here. I think we can get ahead of this situation at some point. Might not even be in our lifetime, but it will happen.
I think it's going to happen. I mean, so just to give you an example, we've been talking about the use of this tool, the continuous glucose monitor, right, to reveal truth. You talk about all those vegan doctors in this movie and basically how they all lied. And we're talking about revealing truth through the use of tools like a continuous glucose monitor and 5-minute blood tests that we can do in the office. So you can see your cholesterol and your triglycerides in real time. You don't have to believe vegan propaganda showing you a cloudy tube on a screen that was just a joke. So we went to Abbott, right, who makes this device. We went to them. Okay, and we said, we're an office. We want this information in real time. Okay, we want to be able to watch people in real time. Can you help us with this? Okay, and they said, you wouldn't be interested. I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we're piloting something with Kaiser, and it's going to cost $10,000. Okay, and I'm like, no, we're interested. They're like, yeah, but you're just an office. Like, no physician, this is what they said, no physician's office has asked for this yet. No physician's office has asked for this yet. And we only just started doing it with Kaiser. I don't know if it was Kaiser or somebody. I don't know who it was.
One of the big groups.
One of the big, massive, get this. We are the first physician's office to be able to, in real time, get notified when somebody's blood sugar is off so we can reach out to them and help them.
Yeah, it's like, it's the same thing I've been saying. Like, if your alcoholic patients could have a monitor, and every time they took a drink, beep, 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 it goes off. You call them, go, hey, what's going on? You could stop this disaster before it happens. And we're seeing the same thing with sugars. I'm telling you, I have patients that, I look during the middle of the day, they're not checking their sugars. I say, why aren't you checking them? Well, because I'm having cookies at work and I don't want you to see it, right? It's still going to have the physiologic effect. You're paying me to take care of you. So let me see the data, right? And I can help you, and you should see it yourself. So I think it's that where there's accountability. There's no doubt what we're doing. I'm meeting with patients every week. If I go 4 weeks, they fall off the wagon in between. If we go every week and we talk and they know they're coming to see me, they're perfect. It's been great. So I think there's a lot of that's accountability. And I think when you see it, you go, crud. One of my patients had 2 mimosas. His sugar went from 90 to like 280 or something like that, and sustained for a long time. He's like, okay, I'm done with that. Because they don't know. So when you see it, it makes a difference. Here's the problem with continuous glucose monitor for all the doctors. The doctors don't understand the physiology. So when they see the sugars go high, they're going to say, here's insulin to bring your sugars down. Instead of saying, let's stop you have a patient who's been on insulin for all these years, for years and years. Within 10 days, he's off of all insulin, right? He's actually off of we had to take him off all of his diabetes medicines because his sugar's running 70 and 80 now. He was taking medicine because he was drinking 7 sodas a day. And no one said, hey, maybe we should change what you're doing. He changed what he's doing, and he's like a different person. So it's so frustrating. It is really, really frustrating that we don't know how to manage it. So people don't want the data because they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And some doctors will literally say to people, I know they do it with juvenile diabetes or type 1. They'll say, oh, just eat whatever you want and take more of this fast-acting insulin, which is what the drug companies want you to take, because the fast-acting stuff is very expensive versus you could get the slow-acting stuff. It's almost free at this point. And they'll say, oh, well, doc, why can't I just have my kid take less sugar? And they'll say, well, your kid's life is going to already suck. Why make it suck even worse? That's counterintuitive to everything. When you think, and these are doctors telling people to do this. Don't make your kid life sucks. Let him have all the cake and pies and Snickers and everything else he wants. Just give him this insulin. Well, hell, who's behind that? I would think the insulin makers are behind that.
Well, not only that, I'll tell you, this just happened this week. A patient reached out to me and says, hey, my aunt's on this medicine that you can inject. That's a diabetes medicine, but she's lost weight with it. I want it. And I said, look, that medicine you can't justify because you're not diabetic, first of all. Second of all, it's $1,200 a month. With a good RX coupon, it goes down to $980 a month. Would you rather cut your soda intake, or would you rather take a drug that's $1,000 a month? You could do a heck of a lot of things with $1,000 a month. You know what I'm saying? It's this mindset of I just want a pill and I don't want to change what I'm doing. And as long as doctors buy into that, we're in major trouble in healthcare, because again, when you're shooting that insulin, it's not making that sugar magically disappear. It's storing it in your fat and it's making your visceral fats go. And we know this is the biggest risk factor for everything we're dealing with in medicine.
The problem is, guys, because you're hitting it. Let's combine this. So I was talking about being the first physician's office to approach Abbott about this, and so if you look at it, nobody cares enough to even reach out to them and say, we want this data in real time. Okay, so it is not the patients who are not trying hard enough. It's not them. It's not accountability, right? Doctors don't care. Brian, you talk about this all the time. You say that there's a level of burnout. I mean, you were experiencing it. Doctors don't care. And not only do they not care, what they think is right is fat is terrible and you have to cut your calories, right? So since they've gotten so many they believe patients can't change. They believe patients are lying.
We believe patients aren't listening to us and that they're lying. And my CGM tells me who's lying and who's not. There's no doubt about it, right? We see it. It's hard to cheat on that. It's a lie detector test hooked to you. So it's very hard because you think twice. A lot of people tell me, I want to be on that just so I don't eat a cookie, because if I'm by myself, I'll eat a cookie. I know it.
It's not the patients. It's not the patients. It's the years of bad advice from the doctors.
Well, the problem is, here's the problem. this is the reality. When a doctor cares, they burn out because they care and they see when you're Gary Fetke and you care and you watch these feet dropping in a bucket day after day, you say, I got to do so. I cannot keep doing what I'm doing. This is maddening because you lose your mind. If you don't care, it's like you work at the DMV and you don't care. It's like, okay, patient after patient, I'm making my money, I'm going home. You know, and if you don't care, it's very easy not to burn out. So that's the problem. The doctors who are burning out are our best, are most caring, because I was burning out because I had 15 minutes, and how am I going to teach them all this stuff in 15 minutes in the standard model? It's impossible. But I can take an hour with that same patient and we can change their life. But if I have 6 minutes, so like Kaiser, they have, you know, for routine visits, 6 to 8 minutes, and they're there for just your sore throat. Here you go. Oh, and here's some medicine for your diabetes. The problem is people aren't getting this comprehensive care that they need, and they're a disaster. I can't just treat you for your cold and not say your sugars are 500 and I'm not doing anything about it. I'll just go to the ER. I mean, that's why our system is hurting, because we're not taking the steps to prevent it before it's a disaster, right? And so I think that's a big, I mean, because I'm frustrated as a doctor because my job is the front lines. I'm on the front lines here, right? And so I don't hear any of our leaders saying, look, vitamin D, we have studies on this. Zinc, we have studies on this. Metabolic health, you know, all these things that wearing a mask is not going to protect you from diabetes down the road. It's not going to protect you from all these, our biggest killers, right? So that's the frustration. Like, gosh, we can't just look short term. We have to look at the whole huge term. And to tell people, look, you can drop your insulin from 58 down to 3. And I have a patient who just recently did that. It's incredible changes with minimal weight loss. Troy, you're talking about the same stuff. You're saying the same thing. So I think when you say, gosh, we can't just sit here and live, you got to intervene. You got to take control where you can. So if you're drinking 10 sodas a day, good luck. I can't help you. I can't, because all you can do is take drugs down the road, and you're going to be the person that's on 30 drugs when you're 80 years old or 60 or 70 or whatever.
I'm trying to figure out where I was standing when people started drinking more than one soda. I remember if you drank one soda a day, you had a problem. You know, when I was a kid, we didn't even have soda in our house. You know, we got it. I would get one a month, or whenever my dad would take me for a haircut over at Frank Danino's barbershop. You know, and it was one soda, and it was, I think Coke used to come in 6 or 7 ounce bottles back then, a big thick Coke bottles, you know, but sodas weren't part of anything. And then before I knew it, everybody was drinking sodas and diet sodas. And then you would see people walking down the street with these tubs of soda. One of the most disheartening things I've ever seen is I was giving a talk down in southern Mississippi in Macomb. And I noticed walking down the street, it's a huge Afro-American community. Do we say African-American? Do we say black? I don't even know what we say anymore, but there were black people. And so the community down there was mostly black. These people are strolling up and down the street, very nice people. To a person, they were all morbidly obese. And I'm not talking they had 50 pounds to lose, morbidly obese. I'm talking, to describe it, some of these women were wider than they were tall. It was very sad. It felt like I was living in Bizarro World, especially when you come from California. Now you're in Macomb, Mississippi, and you're looking at this. So I went down to the local Starbucks, and I sat there and I looked around for a while. Saw what it was doing. It might have not been a Starbucks. It might have been a Community Coffees, which looks like a Starbucks. It was some version of a Starbucks. And then I just walked the streets, because when you go in to give a speech, you only have 1 hour to work and you're there for a whole day. I'm looking at these people. And the one thing I noticed is they had constant sugar going into their bodies. They're walking down the street with these big tubs of some kind of liquid in it. I'm sure it wasn't water, because it came from a 7-Eleven. I actually saw people walking around with a family bag of something like Doritos or Cheetos or something. They're so broken, they need to constantly put this in their mouth, because as Gary Taubes described it in his second book on the subject, Why We Get Fat and What to Do About It, the brain thinks you're starving. You metabolically, you're broken, and your brain thinks you're starving, even though you have 200 pounds of energy hanging off of your body that can't be utilized. And I was thinking about Gary in that book the entire time I was in Macomb. And then I started thinking, and it's the reason I brought up the fact that there were mostly Black people living in this town. We try to spend so much time with Black Lives Matter and Black this and Black that, and oh, we need to take care of Black people. Well, why isn't anyone taking care of these people? Why isn't anyone going into Macomb, Mississippi, educating those people as to what's going on? Are these people going to doctors, or are they just giving them insulin and telling them, hey, go eat all the Cheetos and drink all the 64-ounce beverages you could get your hands on? I see that as a real problem. I'm not belittling the Black Lives Matter problem. I'm just saying that if you really want to help people, isn't this a bigger problem? And should we be dealing with this?
That's the key when we start attacking metabolic health. It's gonna help the African American community even more, because they're and Latino community also. Because it's a financial issue also, and it's lifestyle, and it's what they're seeing, all they're brainwashed, right? So I think that's a big problem. Tony Hampton's doing a great job in Chicago doing this, like really helping people, saying, look, stores, well, how come you don't have vegetables here? No one will buy them. Okay, how about if we bring them in? I guarantee you I'll send people, because I'm going to help these patients. So there's things like that where they don't have good food. Like they have fast food and liquor stores. Really, that's the problem. It's a disaster, right? They're going to go drink sodas and they're going to be walking around. So it's a like what you observed back then is still, it's a huge problem until we intervene and say, guys, look, and you educate individual people and say, look, here's the ramifications, right? I have a guy who quit soda alone. He did no other change. No exercise change, no diet change, other than quitting soda. He lost 36 pounds in 6 weeks.
Crazy, right?
It's insane. You look at it and say, holy cow. And Lustig was talking about that. He's one of the guys who's made me realize maybe orange juice isn't my best bet when I'm obese. Maybe I should switch to something else. Maybe water would be a good idea for me, right? Because I have an energy oversupply clearly. So I think it's those kind of things when you start looking, and we're all kind of saying the same thing in a different way, right? Basically, I mean, you know, whether you're Ted Naiman, whether you're whoever out there, is kind of, we're all saying the same thing.
We're saying
get rid of the processed garbage.
Can I go ahead, Vinny, go ahead.
We're all saying exactly the same thing, Brian. And I think it's all a good thing, and we need more people saying it. The only problem I see with Tony Hampton is that there's only one Tony Hampton. You know, yeah. I would like to see 500 Tony Hamptons around the country, not just one guy in Chicago, but we need a Tony Hampton down in Mississippi. We need a Tony Hampton in California. We need a Tony Hampton in Arizona. We need a lot of Tony Hamptons. I feel like I always tell Tony he's like my Black brother, because we both were educated down in New Orleans, and then he moved up to Chicago. The guy is doing the Lord's work in Chicago, but is he getting out there fast enough? I bring him on my podcast as often as I can, because he is working to try to help Black people. Another guy that's in the Hispanic community is Christian Assad, cardiologist down on the border of Texas. But there's only one Christian Assad. You know, there's not 500 Christian Assads.
Yeah, and he's doing a podcast with Ariel Ortiz reaching Latin America, and you know, it's fun because I got to do a match with those guys. I say, guys, look, that your community is getting decimated, and no one's saying anything. And it's hard because it's a hard sell, because you got a lot of machismo guys who go, I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. But these guys, because they can talk street too, because they grew up and you know, and they know the culture, they know how to reach people, and that's the key, is we have to reach people. You know, I'm trying to reach the Italian community here in San Diego. I think that's going to be the hardest challenge in the world, right?
Good luck with those guys.
Yeah, but I have some guys. The guy who lost 36 pounds was Italian. He's Italian, and so, you know, when people see him, they're like, "Oh my gosh, what'd you do?" Well, I quit soda. Oh, maybe I'll quit soda. So what happens is you throw these little grenades into a community. I have a Latino lady that they told me was going to be my worst patient in the world. I just spoke to her for our last appointment during her weight loss stuff. She's lost 23 pounds. Her anxiety resolved. Her reflux disease is gone. Her joint pains are better. Like, her whole family's impacted by her. They thought she was nuts at first. Now they're all like, "What are you eating?" They see her getting better. And she was supposed to be my worst patient ever, right? And like, her family warned me, and they apologized in advance. They go, "She's not going to listen." But when she had her continuous glucose monitor, she realized, oh my gosh, when I eat pineapple, my sugar goes to 200. When I'm having a fruit smoothie, it goes way up. So she started realizing, oh, so she didn't need me as a coach. She saw it herself. It goes, "Did you see what happened Wednesday? I had an apple. One apple, and her sugar went crazy." She's like, "Forget it. I'm done with apple. I'm done with it." Like, she saw it herself. So no matter what I told her, I could tell if I tell her it's bad for her and her sugar stays stable, she's gonna go, this guy's nuts. But she sees it, and she would come back to me and go, did you see what that? I thought I could get away with this. And grapes, sugars go crazy because they're natural, right? I mean, people think if it's natural, uranium's natural, but it's not healthy to eat, right? So I think when people start realizing for themselves, then we have credibility, and I think that's part of the problem is why people fight this. Why would a CGM not require a prescription? Why? Because it's a valuable tool, and we're in an epidemic. You think we're in a major epidemic, guys. We've been in an epidemic, and if you want to save healthcare, you got to have the right tools to fight it and the right education. So, this is going to spread. It's not going to be Tony Hampton by himself, because people look at Tony and say, is he a reasonable guy or not? Is he having the success? If he is, people start saying, maybe I'll start doing what he's doing.
Right.
So I want to come back to kind of what you guys said and tie some.
Bro, don't forget about our Patreon supporters, man. They want to ask some questions of Vinnie. We got the guy here.
We'll certainly get to it, Brian. So one of the things that you mentioned, Vinnie, was in this Black Lives Matter movement, and Brian has also been talking about kind of the place we're in, where people, just they're in an environment when they're around soda, and just giving up soda would be a huge win. And you mentioned this meeting you're at where obesity had ravaged this community. And I think one of the themes that, I don't know if it's because I'm a New Yorker or whether it's, I'm an Armenian and I've, seen systemic oppression, with my own eyes. Right. I know you're a friend of Giragos over in California. So I don't know so I'm very sympathetic towards that Black Lives Matter movement and this idea of systemic oppression. So if you look at, I think we have to look at obesity in that same mindset, right? Okay. If you look at obesity, look at what's facing that person right there, right? Their family eats a certain way, their community eats a certain way, their doctors don't give a shit, and the government is telling them to eat less calories and move more. Yeah. So they are stuck. They're stuck. There's no help for them.
Yeah, there's no help.
There's zero help for them. There's no way. I was a board certified doctor. I was 350 pounds.
Right.
Right. And let alone somebody who maybe has less education, less money, less time, and less, not as fortunate as I've been. Right. So I think these people and I say this again and again, and people don't like it. They say, Tro, they're a critic of me, because I believe most of obesity is blame the victim.
Well, it is. It's and we got to get out of that mindset. And thank you for mentioning Mark Garagos, because I have a phone call with Mike, his brother, right after this podcast. Their mother passed away. She was 90 years old.
I got to go on. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the Garagoses are such great people. And you're right. We do have these problems, and no one's talking, you want to talk pandemic. We have a bigger pandemic when it comes to obesity than we do with any other pandemic you want to talk about. Can I ask you guys a favor before we get to the Patreon people? You mind if I get up and run to the bathroom really fast and we bring it right back? I'll be back in just a second.
Yeah, me and Brian will just chat a little bit.
Thanks for the setup. We're doing a prostate medicine promo. So perfect, man. Thanks.
Yeah. Work.
No, we can cut this part out. So maybe we can, but let's bring on the Patreon supporters, and we can
tee up the questions. Yeah, absolutely.
Or we could sing. Taro, do you want to do a song? We've been working on our moves and stuff. It's hard to do it remotely, but we're social distancing.
I think we already have some questions.
Please, if you have questions, throw them in there. And hey, Jack, you can cut out this part until Vinnie comes back.
Okay, so let's just tee up some of the questions. All right, so we got a couple questions from Vinnie. If you have a question, just pile it in right now. One of which, so let's just tee them up here. Looks like how to deal with the stall. So we're going to ask Vinnie about how to deal with a stall and losing those last couple pounds.
And actually, if you're interested in that, I think our podcast, we've had so many great guests. It's just brutal because everyone has books and we want to help people to get educated. But we just had Dr. Eric Westman, who's an expert, and Amy Berger on. She has a PDF, I think it's an ebook called The Stall Slayer. Great advice, great practical advice. And you know, my opinion, what I'm seeing clinically right now, and Tro may have a different opinion, and it depends on what you're eating and what you're doing, but it's going to be carb creep. It's going to be stress, not sleeping, those kind of things. And what I'm finding is if someone fasts for a day, it really jumpstarts things because it forces the issue with your body, especially if you're doing weight bearing exercise. So I'm seeing people that are plateaued and they fast for a day or 24, 48, 72 hours. Really, I'm seeing more success at 48 to 72 hours. It's unbelievable that the differences in how you because like Vinnie was saying, you can't get your fat stores. So if you can't get your fat stores to break it down, and what I'm talking about is interleukin-6, this is why I'm interested, because if you're exercising and you don't have sugar in the system, your body's going to make more interleukin-6 to break down fat because you need an energy source. Your body wants to survive. So I think that's a huge deal. Tro, did you have any opinion on that?
Look, I prefer, so if you ask me what's your preference, carb restriction in this order: carb restriction, meal frequency restriction, down to 1-ish meal a day. Then it's added fat restriction, not adding fat. Then it's exercise, right? And then it's extended fasting in that order.
I think so too. And I don't think extended fasting is necessarily critical.
I mean, like a 48-hour.
Yeah, 48. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But let's see what the great Vinnie Tortorich thinks. Vinnie, are you on with us yet?
I'm back. Yes.
All right. Perfect. So we got a patient, a person here, Patreon, member who's asking, what is somebody's doing low carb, somebody's, doing intermittent fasting, and they're stuck a couple pounds more than their goal, and they want to shed those last pounds. What should they do?
Nothing in particular. And I do really mean that. What happens is, and I saw this while I was writing my book, Fitness Confidential, people will try to start gaming the system when they get close. In other words, that first 100 pounds might come off, first 150, and you're down to almost fighting weight. You start to see the 2-pack and then the 4-pack. And then, you're about to get that 6-pack. You're about to hit the holy grail of where you want to be. Maybe an area you haven't been since you were a high school wrestler, or maybe a level you've never been, right? And or you're looking at that number on the scale, and everything becomes so important that you stop dancing with the date that you brought to the prom, right? Which is not a good move. You won't get laid that way. You gotta stick with the date you brought, right? And so I would say do nothing. The last few pounds are always, and the last few pounds can be anywhere from 5 pounds to 15 or 20 pounds. It's much more difficult to lose that weight than it is to lose the first 100, 150, because now overall you have the percentage you have to lose is way less, right? So it becomes more difficult. You could up your exercise a little bit. You could look at the, maybe your fat is, your intake is a little too high on any given day. If you're not on a continuous glucose monitor, and you're not seeing where that number is, then start looking around. Maybe you started slipping a little bit. Maybe it's too much dairy, because dairy could have a certain amount of lactose in it, not lactic acid, but lactose, which is sugar, and that can get you. So just look around and see what's doing. Be honest with yourself, and you might see where you're making mistakes, but in general, don't try to do anything special.
Yeah, I agree. The added fat sometimes, a little bit of exercise sometimes, but if you're that 2-pack to 6-pack territory, the 2 to 4-pack to 6 to 8-pack territory, it's a mind game. It's a mind game, and it's not a long-term overall health game, in my personal opinion. All right, so we got another question about exercise. This is right up your alley. Do you think exercise, particularly high-intensity interval training, can accelerate the resolution of metabolic disease? Do you think more endurance-type exercise has a role as well? Same, complementary? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question, and there's an actual real answer to it. High-intensity interval training will do the reverse of what you want it to do. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute, I'm burning a shit ton of calories in no time doing that. Yes, you are. But when you do high intensity interval training, you're also burning a lot of blood glycogen, and your body is going to have to maintain homeostasis. It's got to come back to getting the sugar back in. You're going to have sugar cravings, or you're going to have to eat something to get back to level. And that also invites the opportunity to overeat sugars. It invites the opportunity for your glucose to go way high. Again, we were talking about that earlier. It can cause your insulin levels to pop up. So why not just avoid all of that? So I always tell people to do type 2, zone 2 training. And what that means is you're between 70 and 79% of your aerobic capacity. That way you're using fat as energy. Your body has enough time to convert fat into ketone bodies, and it burns that way more efficiently. You can actually do it in zone 3, but in zone 3, you're burning some sugar with it, which if you stay in that state long enough, you're going to have to take it back in. So zone 2, 70 to 79% of your aerobic capacity. And just to figure out what that is, take the number 180. Notice I did not say 220. I said 180, and subtract your age from that. So let's say, Tro, how old are you?
I forget, 38, 37, something like that.
Okay, so 180 minus 37, you get 143, right? So, but Troy is not a couch potato, so you can add 5 clicks to that. 148 is where is Tro's highest number he should ever be at when doing aerobics. And here's the beauty of doing zone 2 aerobics. The more, the merrier. It strengthens your heart. It adds mitochondria into the areas that you're actually working. So if you're doing more cycling, it's going to build up your quads, more mitochondria. Your heart will work synergistically with that. It doesn't matter whether you're hiking, walking, running, rowing machine, stair machine. It will build up those areas, and it's way more beneficial for you. So I would say go in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I do like high intensity interval training, but like about a 3 to 5 minute zone 2. And if you want to get that kind of hypertrophy, like a 15 to 30 second, more of like a resistance training type of period in between those zone 2, the zone 2 area. All right, we got another question here. What's the best way to start or restart, cold turkey or gradual?
I'm a cold turkey guy. I believe in ripping the Band-Aid off, because it doesn't start until you start. But, Brian had mentioned a few things earlier on, just getting off of soft drinks can make a big difference. So if you're I personally will tell you, rip the Band-Aid off, go through the keto flu, just get off of the junk and go through that couple of days of kind of feeling crappy before you start feeling great. Other people might say, you know what, this week I'm going to cut out all soft drinks. Next week, I'm going to stop having cookies while I'm watching television. The following week, there will be no more cereal and milk. So within 3 weeks, you can cut out all the junk, right? It works. I've seen it work, but realize that it won't start until you actually start, right? You can lose some initial weight from cutting out soft drinks and the whole thing, but you guys see it with those CGMs, right? It doesn't start until you start.
Yep.
So take the time, or, do it right away. I say do it right away.
How do you feel about OMAD? How do you feel about OMAD as a meal, the time restricted eating, OMAD, like 1 meal a day?
The first time I ever heard of OMAD was from the world's first Mr. Olympia. His name was Mickey Hargitay. He was married to Jane Mansfield, and his daughter is Mariska Hargitay, a famous actress. And the guy was into health until the day he died. I think he made it till he was 90. He was lean as you can be. And Mickey was in 1991 was doing 1 meal a day, and that meal was meat, or some form of meat, pork, fish, and tons of it. But he ate 1 meal a day, and he was very healthy. I played around with it over the years. I was fine with it. But if you're going to do OMAD, I would tell you to first be in dietary ketosis, be it fat adapted.
Yeah.
And then if you want to mess around with it, yes. But if you're going to do a bro science version of it, I'm not going to eat for 23 hours a day, and then I'm going to pig out on everything I want for 1 meal a day, good luck, because you're going to go down a path you don't want to go down.
Absolutely. I agree. 100% agree.
I speak from experience because I've done OMAD for, that's just my lifestyle now, and plateaued. And then I said, okay, let me change it up. Things start happening again. So I think your body gets used to it. And now obviously I've been in ketosis this whole time, but your body gets used to it. And the interesting thing, just going back to exercise, I did a 15-minute Ben Bakikio workout. My ketones, I was on a longer fast. I never do this, but it just happened to be, I was supporting someone doing a longer fast. Ketones started 4.4. Usually I run 0.4 to 0.8, 1.2 maybe, 4.4. 15 minutes of workout, my ketones went from 4.4 to 2.2. My glucose went from 78 to 82, right, during that. So my body was burning fat during that workout. So the ketones dropped significantly. So anyways, it is very interesting, and I think, changing up what you're doing, just like with diet, I think sometimes just if things aren't happening, doing what you're doing, you got to change a variable somewhere. Yeah.
All right. This is the last question. It comes from Bib. Okay, Bib is asking, he's seeing some news articles saying hot cocoa is flying off the shelves. And if you look back a couple months back during the COVID peak, Dunkin' Donuts donates to the hospital, this actually was really harmful to me and my wife. We went and we made low carb cookies for an entire hospital in the Yale system because of what we saw. But anyway, the question here is, how do we promote the low carb and healthy messaging, right? When we're faced with kind of this Krispy Kreme, free Happy Meals and hot cocoa flying off the shelves messaging from the news.
I spoke to a guy 2 days ago named David Scholes. He's coming on my show, and he also has a doctor that's coming on to my show. And I bring up David. He allows me to mention his name because his wife died, 48-year-old Asian woman died of COVID-19. And the whole time she was in the hospital, they were feeding her sugar on top of sugar on top of sugar. And the cytokine storm got worse and worse. And he kept begging, please, can you put my wife on a ketogenic diet? No, we're going to do this. This is protocol. Well, it got down to the last, I don't want to exaggerate, 3 or 4 days of her life. They knew she was gone, or she wasn't going to make it. And he was able to get the nutritionist at the hospital to take all sugars away and just give her fat. And her levels improved. The cytokine, whatever, and I don't understand how it works. I'm sure you guys do. Went down to like 300 or went down 300. I'm not really sure, but it was working. And all the doctors in the hospital went, look at that. Look at that. But it was too late. She passed away. Right.
Yeah, we have the data. Hyperglycemia is associated with worse outcomes. Diabetes is associated with the worst outcomes. Insulin use, and the more insulin you use is associated with worse outcomes. No reason to keep that diet, the sugar, high sugary diet.
And this guy is distraught. He lost the love of his life. I don't know how he's walking upright, knowing what he knows. But he's going to come on the show, and it breaks my heart to think of this and to think of how many people we might have saved. And I'm not saying that cutting sugars out is the end all and be all for COVID-19, but he's also introducing me to a doctor, to a research scientist who is doing the same thing and replicating this in the lab and figuring it out that you can change all of this. right? Now, I don't know what it means, but I can tell you I'm not going out of ketosis until we figure out a vaccination for this, this virus.
Yeah.
I think more people should start considering getting off of sugar if they're look. We can walk around with a mask, and the mask may or may not help. We think it does help. I say have an N95 mask if you can help. Okay, fine. What else can I do? If you're really concerned about the virus, you're going to stop at a mask.
Yeah. Eat good, eat well, cut out processed foods, cut out sugar, get enough vitamin D, move, move. And I agree with you. If you care about N90, the virus particles transmitting, get an N95. I agree. Brian, what say you to finish us off?
I hate to say this, but 100%. I 100% agree with you guys. I would say, I really, you look at it, it's like, we know that. You look at the data. I mean, don't get me started at the last second, but when we say follow the science, we have to follow the science. We have to lead down that path, whether you like it or not, or whether it contradicts what you've always thought. You look at the science, and that's the problem. You have to look at it. It's like, we know for a fact, we know this. We looked at the data of who's dying. So when you have a 23-year-old ultra marathon runner, are they in the same risk category as a 78-year-old diabetic who's 48, whose A1C is running through the roof and their insulin's through the roof? Of course not. So we have to look at that. So we all want to be as close to that 23-year-old ultra marathon runner's metabolic health. This is what I've been talking about from day one. We've all been saying the same thing. Metabolic health is critical because inflammation is what's killing people. So how do you do that? You decrease inflammation. So giving people a bunch of sugar, then shooting them with insulin, you want to spike your inflammatory markers, just do that. That's what works. We know that. So if you're trying to prevent that, you do the opposite. So I think we're going to learn a heck of a lot in medicine, and I think part of the problem is when you question, you look at for me, sometimes I wish I didn't know what I know looking at the data and looking at who's living and dying, because you sound like a nutcase because everyone is convinced that they know the answer without looking at the data. And that's the problem we run into. So yeah, I 100% agree with you guys that, we want to maximize our chance of survival. So I could tell you this lady who's lost 23 pounds, normalized her sugars, normalized her insulin, got rid of reflux and all those things. She's improved her chance of surviving COVID significantly.
Right.
I mean, that's just what it is. So that's the point is at some point you have to take the mask off and go back to life. At some point we're going to have to do that. So you don't send people to the front line who are totally out of shape. They go through all this training and they get in shape before they go to the front line in the military. They don't say, oh, you have it, you're in terrible shape, we'll send you up there. Right? You don't do that. They go through boot camp and Hell Week and all this crazy stuff because you have to be as fit as you can for the battle. And that's what I think we really need to focus on. So, Vinnie,
I couldn't agree more.
How do people watch your movie, man?
Right now, you can go to iTunes and download it. Not download it. You can pre-order it on iTunes. I'm sorry.
I just did it. I just pre-ordered it.
Yeah, because your wife, who's a big fan of mine, is going to want to see this. So it's a great Christmas gift, Tro. You just hand her that and you get some good loving off of her. So yeah, go to iTunes right now and pre-order it. It will be up. You can buy it on January 1st or 2nd, whenever, Gravitas puts it out. I don't have control over that, but it's the first couple of days of January. It will be out, but you can get it right now. And it's very important that people get it so that it remains at the top of the list when it comes out on iTunes. So it's important that people, if you go, oh, I'm just going to wait for it to come out. No, go get it now. It helps us push all of this stuff forward. So do it.
And if you guarantee hooking up, Vinnie, I'm watching with my wife tonight. I didn't have a chance to watch it with her. I was listening in the background while I was working. So I really want to focus and listen. So I'll let you guys know how it goes.
Appreciate it.
I won't give you details.
You want me to give you a little, let me give you a little secret. Vinnie, when my wife puts out like a new mix, she asks herself, would Vinnie use this? That's her, that's it. Like she's got one.
We are lost, man. What would Vinnie do? We're gonna have little bracelets looking. What would Vinnie?
Like,
VD, yeah. VD, perfect, Vinnie.
Would Vinnie use this? Like she views you as like, all right, if it's clean enough, Vinnie would use it. That's the way she she goes about it. Anyway, all right, guys, listen.
Yeah,
this
Vinnie,
was
Vinnie,
awesome.
much
Thank
respect.
You so
Thank you
much.
for joining us. Thank you for all the work you're doing, you know, for being a pioneer in what we're doing and opening the door for us too, and for our listeners. And really, it's just, you know, what you've done is it's huge. So, and you're a fun guy, man. I always enjoy our conversation. It's always like, but you're straight up. You say, look, here's what it is, whether you like it or not. And I love that. Tro's the same way, right? So I think, you know, being able to speak the truth and saying, look, here's what it is. Go research it yourself. We're not going to spoon feed you. Go look and see if we're telling the truth or not. Don't, you know, we can't be a society where we don't think for ourselves and say, maybe I can look at both sides and try to figure it out. So we appreciate you and what you're doing. And everyone, Vinnie guarantees a hookup if you watch this movie. So we'll see what happens. I don't know if that's FDA approved or not, but hey, thanks a lot, Vinnie.
Thank you, Vinnie.
Have a great one.
Bye,
Go
guys.
ride your bike, man.
Well.
All right. And Patreon supporters, thank you for your support. Thank you for keeping us going. It's been a great journey, and we thank you. And you know, again, focusing on your metabolic health is critical.